We're coming into spring. Flowers are starting to bloom, pollen in the air. People are going outside more because it's no longer cold. It's not the heat of summer yet, but it's the nice, cooler spring, at least in parts of the world. Some places, if you're further north, of course, may come later. But the outside is getting beautiful, right? The sun's coming out, flowers are blooming. There's lots of beauty in the world again. Some places aren't. I was driving, I forget where, but I was looking at some of the buildings and they were just there, kind of ugly, kind of just blocks. And they could be built to be so much more, right? Like things don't have to be drab and beige. You see a lot of beige on line. People recommend, pick a nice neutral tone for, you know, painting walls. If you're going to paint something, paint it neutral. So a lot of apartments are in sort of neutral tones, beige, grays. Homes are in neutral tones, beiges and grays. And you see some of those on like TikTok, YouTube, Instagrams, any of those channels where they're just picking gray stuff, no real personality. Colors seem to be fading away. And so I guess with it being spring, I've been thinking about that. There's a lot less color around in places. Like a lot of the more recent movies seem to have been very dark, not in terms of content, but in terms of vibrancy, right? How much color is in that movie, right? I saw some stills from the Napoleon movie, which I didn't go see, but I saw some images from it and compared them to other images from older films, and they just seemed more muted, right? Like a lot of stuff was just duller, less vibrant. It just seems an odd choice. I am kind of guilty of that myself. I don't have any, paintings or posters up in most of my place because I haven't found any I liked enough to want to look at every day. But I'd like to think if I found something that was like, I really like that, I want to see that regularly, I'd pick it up and put it in there, and that adds some extra color to it. And I tend to like grays to begin with. They're convenient. They're not, I don't really tend towards the louder colors. I tend to more muted myself, but I think I'm going to change that. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't pick up some of the brighter colors. But I've been thinking about that. And I've been thinking about some of the buildings, things we build, right? We could build things to last longer, to be more beautiful, right? In the US, we build a lot of houses out of wood, primarily out of wood. And I know housing is expensive, but I also see all these videos where people are going through them, going like, this is poorly done, this is poorly done, this is shoddy, this is poor material, poor lumber, low quality lumber, and it's going to be a problem within 5 years. It's going to have problems, and we could build things better and to be more beautiful. You can see, I think there's cottages in the UK that people have been living in for 400 or 600 years, if not longer, right? We used to build stuff with stone. You can find them in most old downtown areas. There's brick buildings or stone buildings that are well put together. Even from the 50s or 60s, there's buildings that were built out of just concrete that are well put together and solid. Whereas a lot of the new construction seems to be cheaper and poorly done. And part of that's, there's tons of reasons for it. There's financial incentives not to, there's time constraints, there's zoning laws and that sort of thing. But I don't see why we couldn't build stuff to at least be nicer, right? It doesn't have to all kind of be terrible and degraded. I did see an image of a new French street. At least it said it was new. Who knows? It's the internet. Could be fake. Could be AI generated. Who knows? But it looked nice. It had some color. It had nice plants on it and all that stuff. And it's like, we could build that here in the US. And I think we should in many ways. We shouldn't just be looking at things to build them immediately and be done with them. They should at least be well built at the very least. And ideally also be made to be beautiful. There's not enough beauty in the world as we're coming into spring, and there is more than there was. It's still, you can see it in TV shows, right? Where there's poorly done costuming. It's not even something where it's like, oh, well, that's historically accurate. That's what it looked like. and it's just to our sensibilities that it doesn't look good. Like I was looking back at some of the costumes for Rings of Power, and they just look bad. They look plastic, and it's supposed to be metal armor, and it looks like I could 3D print that. Probably. Like if I 3D printed something, that's what it would look like, and that's not a good thing. Yeah, I understand, like, hey, maybe they couldn't get the Weta Workshop who did the Lord of the Rings stuff. They could be contractual reasons. They could be, we're not going to spend the money on it, or any number of things. But it just looked so bad. And then, you see some of the press release stuff, and it's just kind of like, you see some of the stuff for other shows, and it's just like, this isn't good looking. Let alone the story, let alone the acting, let alone any of the other details, right? It just looks bad. It doesn't look good. It's not pretty. And some stuff's supposed to be dark. I get it, right? You're not going into that thinking it's going to look good, right? Because it's not designed for it. But most stuff, there's no reason for it to look so bad, right? The Lord of the Rings one bothered me because I quite like Lord of the Rings. It's probably my favorite novel. But that Rings of Power show has just looked so bad. I didn't even bother watching it. I saw the trailer and it was like, I know a couple people who are probably going to watch it. I'll let them tell me if it's any good. And none of them enjoyed it, so I never got around to watching it. It looked terrible. It's just a disappointment, right? It's like, it could be better. You have this billionaire with all this money who's like, okay, I'm going to do TV shows, fine. But why do they look so bad? Why does it look so bad? You have this great property, and it has to look terrible. Like, just the costuming looks bad. It's a shame. But going back to the original point, is like, things could look better. They don't have to be drab and terrible. And, I understand, hey, you got to build stuff to fit the region in which you build it, which leads to regional styles, this sort of thing, right? The colonial South is very different than colonial North in the U.S., right? Two different styles of things, two different styles of building, and designed to keep in heat in the North, and in the South designed to keep it as cool as possible, right? Which leads to a different structure of building. And that's perfectly fine too. And some stuff not being to your taste is also perfectly fine, but some stuff is also just like, we could build more beautiful buildings. City center, downtown city centers could be more beautiful, and then more people would want to live there. But some stuff's just built terribly. I saw some, and I drove by some industrial park areas, and it's not quite the metal sheet siding that it used to be, but some of them are still like, this could be a little bit nicer. It doesn't have to be terrible, but I think that's probably a discussion for another day, on whether or not purely chasing the bottom line is a good thing or not. But I think that's for another day. But I don't know. So that's what I've been thinking about this past week is, do what you can to try to make your life a little nicer. Like, just aesthetically nicer. Something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be for everyone, right? What you enjoy, I may go, I don't like that. And that's fine, because it's your life, not mine. So if you're like, I like this style of art, then, get a piece, even if it's a print, and put it up. Or, take care of the area around in which you live. If you see trash, pick it up and throw it out, and just make the area just a little nicer. I don't know. That's all I've got for this week. I will catch you next week with another video.